Monogamy versus open relationships. Let's definitely watch that. Lex Friedman is interviewing Ben Shapiro and Destiny. Of course, political debaters. Destiny, I'm familiar with. Ben Shapiro, I know on a surface level. I mean, of course, technically, I don't know any of these people, but I am familiar with Destiny. Phenomenal political debater. I think Ben Shapiro is of that cloth as well, too. And then, of course, you got Lex Friedman, man, solid podcaster. I like his podcasting style, whatever the case. So the topic of discussion looks like they're debating. So basically, Lex is playing the referee, I guess you could say the mediator between Ben Shapiro and Destiny. And it looks like the topic of discussion on this clip is monogamy versus open relationships. I'm definitely curious to hear their thoughts on this one, because all these people in this video are minds that I would say I respect, even if I don't agree with their views 100%, either of them. They do have ideas and ideologies that I respect, so I'm definitely looking forward to watching this. Let's see what they're talking about.
Ben, you're in a monogamous marriage. Destiny, you've been mostly in an open marriage until recently. How foundational is marriage, monogamous marriage, to the United States of America? Can open marriages work? Are they harmful to society? Ben.
Marriages are the single most important thing that people can do in the United States, because the things within your control are easier to control than the things outside your control. People tend to think about big political change, obviously, about things they can do to change the entire system. But the reality is the thing that you can do that best changes society is to get married and have kids and raise your kids responsibly. That is the single best thing that you can do. Can an open marriage work? I mean, I think that it depends on your definition of work. So in my version of work, the answer is no, because what you actually need in order to facilitate the healthy growing of a child is a father and mother who are committed to each other. All ideas about there being no emotional component to sexual activity are completely specious. That it is truer for men than it is for women, but it's not true for either. The idea of a full commitment to a human being with whom you genetically create children, which is typically how we've done it throughout human existence, is in fact the fundamental basis for any functional civilization. It allows for the transmission of culture and values. It allows for the transmission of beliefs and responsibility, and it gives the great lie to both the communitarian lie and the atomistic individualist lie. The communitarian lie is that you belong to the giant community of man, which is not true because you have a family. And your allegiance should be and is naturally to the members of your family first. That's how we learn, and then we expound that out. And it also is a lie to the notion that we are all atomistic individuals with no responsibilities. We are born into a world of responsibilities. Everyone is born into a world of responsibilities and rules and roles, and those are good. And if we do not actually socialize our children that way, there will be, number one, no children. Number one, there will be no healthy children. Number two, there will be no healthy children. Number three, there will be not the foundation for either social fabric, which is the real glue that holds together society, or for a functional government. So, yes, monogamous marriage. I'm a fan. 15 years married, 4 kids. Yes.
Destiny, what do you think?
Pause there for a second. I agree 100% with everything that he said. I agree 100% with everything that he said. Before, Destiny gives his take as well, too. I agree with Ben Shapiro in that regard as well, too. I think the best way, if you are going to have children, if you are committed to saying right now, I'm going to have children, no matter how many, 1 child, 2 children, whatever the case is, I do believe the foundation before that happens should be between a man and a woman in a married, structured household. 100%. I do agree. In terms of childbearing, right? Again, and this is, could be my own bias as well, too, but being raised in a 2-parent household, parents are still married to this day. I do agree 100% that if I'm going to entertain the option of marriage and having children, then it should be, if I'm going to entertain the option of having children, I would want it backed in the foundation of marriage. 100%. Mom, dad, household, I agree 100%. I do have my take on marriage, and I'm interested to hear Destiny's thoughts on this as well, too, because, of course, as they mentioned, he's in an open relationship, or he was in an open relationship. I don't think that's his current situation at the moment, but I have my take on the institution of marriage as a whole currently, and I'll give my take on that as well, too. I'll let Destiny go, but I do agree with Ben Shapiro in saying that if you are entertaining the option of having children, it should be in a monogamous relationship, father, mother, married, in a household. I do agree. 100%. Let's see what Destiny has to say on this one.
I think that when we talk about like relationships or marriage, I think something that's really important is we have to talk about whether or not children are being discussed or not. Because I think once you introduce the child aspect, I think the style or the type of relationship that you do is going to become way more important than whatever exists prior to that. Like I would agree, for instance, for in terms of what Ben is saying, that there's probably going to be some structure that is ideal for the care and the raising of a child. I think that having a child gives you a much bigger buy-in to society because now all of a sudden you care about a lot of things that you might not have before because not only do you exist in society, you can't just run. Now you've got a child that exists there and you've got to ensure that everything functions smoothly, not just for you, but for that child as well. And arguably, although we're getting into weird places, I guess, in the world now, like children are the primary conduit for like where you transmit like cultural values and everything. The one kind of weird thing that we're coming up against, that we have been coming up against now for some number of decades and will continue to, is as societies progress, seems like people are having less children. And I actually don't know 100% what the answer is to that question.
I do.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah. I mean, an implementable answer that works, that we know we can get everybody on board with. It seems like for a large part of human history, having children, and it still is, having children is awesome, and children are cool, and children are magical and miraculous and all of this, but you didn't really have much competing for your attention to have a child, right? When you hit a certain age and you started working, especially if you were a woman, I mean, childbirth is kind of the next step, and then having a family, raising your children, and then doing that is kind of the next step. Nowadays, especially with women being able to work, especially with women having access to birth control, there's a lot available in the world that's competing for the interest of people that could otherwise be having children, such that we've almost flipped it, such that, as Ben brought up earlier, like wealthy people tend to have less children than not wealthy people, or unless you're part of particular religious communities that push childbirth a lot. I don't know if I would say there exists a moral imperative on an individual to have children. I think that there's a lot of interesting arguments down that path. I don't know if we're quite at the point yet where we need to say like, oh my God, we're running out of people, we need to have more kids. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we are seeing, weird demographic trends that are having big impacts on how countries are playing out. For instance, the fact that we have a disproportionately huge aging population that needs to be taken care of with medical expenses and everything, that vote in different ways than our younger population, and that when they die off, like the way that society is going to look is going to be a lot different. I don't actually have I'm not entirely sure what the future is going to look like in terms of pushing people to have kids when every single industrialized country, as they become more industrialized, have fewer and fewer and fewer children.
Rapid fire questions.
And the answer, my answer was go to church.
Religion. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
Well, we could talk about religion, but that's not rapid fire at all.
I like that. Neither of these people in this entire video are fools, right? As I said before, all the peoples that were, in this actual clip, I do respect their opinions. I do respect their knowledge, their wisdom, their respective views on how they view things to a degree. I agree with Destiny as well too. And it looked like Destiny agreed with Ben Shapiro in saying that, yeah, if we're talking about, it's one thing to be talking about, having children, and then of course there's the aspect of just like monogamy versus polygamy, or what are the cases, or open relationships, what are the cases. So if we are talking, of course, this is me now, right? This is my own synopsis or my own take on the whole situation. If we're talking about children specifically, right? Specifically in terms of having children, what are the cases? Again, I do believe that it should be backed in a man, a woman who are married under one roof, in the household, all parties under that same household, whatever the case. I agree 100%. I'm not saying that. I would say that we and society have seen as well too that there are disadvantages of being raised by one parent, whether that's the father or the mother, whatever the case is. Where the mom and the father are not under the same roof. I'm not gonna say that it's completely over for you, but I would say that you are at even just economically speaking, at a disadvantage because of the lack of emotional support, financial support, whatever the case is. There's a strain. We can all agree that there's some level of strain raising a child in a single parent household. Again, whether that's the mother, that's the father, whatever the case is, there is some, if at the mere least, there is some level of financial strain or emotional strain, being not able to have both parties, the mother and the father, within a household, right? So there's that element. So in terms of having children, I would say yes. If I'm going to be having children, I would want it backed in the institution of marriage, because of the values and the, I guess even just the kind of the benefits, again, whether you want to back that again as an extra layer in terms of religious beliefs, whatever the case is, that's your prerogative. But I would agree with that, right? Now, let's take out children out of that equation and just entertain monogamy versus open relationships, right? And this is an actual topic I'm very actually interested in, of course, as well, too, being, of course, my age and then I guess societal norms right now, what are the cases? So monogamy versus open relationship. Again, extracting children. I'm always going to lean on the idea of, and it's, of course, I'll lead with a blanket statement and I'll go into greater detail. I think that you have to do what works with your lifestyle. Like, again, that's just a blanket statement. Like, it has to make sense for your lifestyle. Depending on factors such as, you could say, religious beliefs, you could say your financial or economical status. Again, maybe I would definitely say how much money you make. Again, if I'm a high earning man, making well over six figures, whatever the case is, you're maybe going to look at monogamy a little bit different because, again, you are of that 1%, whatever the case is. You're maybe going to look at monogamy a little bit different as you were, let's say, making less than that. I think they even touched on that in this video as well, too. If I'm a man that's making average a salary, maybe, let's say, 30, 40, 50,000. And again, I'm not saying that these people don't, like to exercise their other options as well, too, but you're more likely going to want to find an equal counterpart based off of that, based off of the amount of options that you have or resources that you even have to entertain other women, if that makes sense, right? So I would say, if I'm choosing to be in a monogamous relationship, yeah, I can be a high value man, a high earning man, and be married and committed and all of that. And that can be backed in my religious beliefs or just safety wise as well, too. My fear of wanting to catch anything out here in these streets. Yeah, I do think that monogamy is a good approach as well, too. A solid approach, a safe approach, a standard societal approach. Yeah, 100%. On the flip side of that, open relationships, right? Open relationships, people entertaining, multiple partners, what it says. I'm going to stay off of polygamy for a second because that's a whole nother thing as well, too. But I'm talking about a man or a woman who has a roster, as they say, or entertains multiple people at a time. I am also going to allude in saying it depends on your lifestyle. It depends if that makes sense for the way you live your life. It depends on your outlook on life or your financial status, whatever the case is. Again, I'll go back to the analogy of speaking about I hate using these terms, whatever the case is, but the high value man or the man that is making, let's say, well over six figures, whatever the case is. Whether we want to admit it or not, that man has options. Let's just keep it 100, bro. Like, if I'm a man that's making X amount of dollars, again, 6 to 7 figures annually, whatever the case is, then let's throw in some other elements as well, too. Now we're kind of speaking just anecdotally for a second. Like, let's say, for example, let's paint the scenario that I'm a high value man. I hate using that word, but whatever the case, that phrase. But let's say I'm a man that's making 6 to 7 figures every year. I have some level of, social status. I'm somewhat, I'm not famous, but you're somewhat known, whatever the case is, within your community, let's say for the most part, even if not whatever on social media, but within your respective, whatever the case is. So there's a level of prestige that comes with you, whatever the case is. You can own your own, whatever the case is. You're on your shit, basically, essentially. And the long story short, you're taking care of business, essentially. Then automatically you are on the radar of a large percentage of women. Now, you can practice discernment and discipline and asking yourself, do I entertain all these women that are maybe at my disposal, whatever the case, maybe not at my disposal, but that I have access to because of the status that I've been able to attain? That's on you. And again, you can back that off of societal beliefs, religious beliefs, whatever the case is. But I do believe if a man has the means financially, emotionally, whatever the case is, because some of it I would admit is just draining. Like, I don't necessarily know. And of course, I'll speak to myself personally as well, too. I'm speaking generally now, but I'll speak to myself specifically as well, too. But generally speaking, if I'm a man that's money's not an issue, I may be, it doesn't maybe even matter what age. Maybe you're in your 30s, whatever the case is, 40s, whatever the case is. You're on your shit. Like, you're handling stuff, bro. And clearly you're in the 1% of men because, it takes a lot for a man to be, that criteria of 6 foot, 6-figure, 6-pack abs, whatever the case is. Like, that's a small demographic. Don't let social media fool you in believing that it's a lot of men that fit that criteria. A lot of men don't fit that bill, 100%. So it's like, if I'm of that and I know that, hey, man, I am a league of my own, or I'm in a small pool of men that even fit this bill, I would say the man in that position does have the right to entertain other people, multiple women, because one, he can financially handle it. I don't know if he could emotionally handle it, being able to, be on the phone and go out on dates and take trips and all of that. That's a lot in itself. But I do believe a man in that position could entertain multiple women because he has the means to do so. Again, based off his lifestyle, if that's what he believes. I'm speaking solely off of the resources, from a resource standpoint. And again, it just has to make sense. Like, the rules in which one would say we are in an open relationship, that has to be by two consenting adults who understand the terms of that commitment. Right? So, and again, you're basing that off of whatever both parties come to terms with, not off of what you see the celebrities do or what social media seems to be the trend as well too. Like, oh, I do this just because, I've earned it, or, society says it. Nah. If you want to talk to your partner and be like, yo, I think we should be in an open relationship because of X, Y, and Z, back that in some type of rationale that makes sense to you. Right? So again, a monogamous relationship makes sense to me. An open relationship makes sense to me for the person who is of that lifestyle. Right? I want to make sure I made that make sense. Let's bring children back into the picture real quick. In terms of, and actually, let me leave that out. Let me just focus on the dynamic of, because that's a whole nother tangent as well too. I maybe even said before on other videos about like antinatalism, although they did speak on it in this video as well too, in terms of, population shortage and what are the cases, whether you believe that or not, the depopulation agenda, or just like people are unwilling to have more kids, what are the cases. So what does that mean for a society that is no longer having children? That's a whole nother topic. I don't want to stray too far off of what this debate was about, which was primarily monogamy versus open relationships. And then, all right, and now I'll speak for myself personally, as I mentioned as well too. So me personally, my whole take on that, speaking personally in my personal life now, not just a blanket statement, but me personally, I don't know if I, one, want to get married, two, want to have children. Right? And I'm basing that off of where am I in my life right now. Again, I'm 34 years old, about to be 35 in April. Not necessarily, I'm dipping my toe in the dating pool from time to time, what are the cases, but I'm not in there's no real prospects of a wife or what are the cases. So I personally, speaking for myself, don't know if the institution of marriage, based on how I live my life today, makes sense for me and my lifestyle. And again, that's even another topic in terms of just the institution of marriage, what it means to be married in America, the protocol of getting married and getting divorced, and the laws and the regulations and everything that comes with getting married and getting divorced. I don't know if I agree with that wholeheartedly. And even just the union of two people, one man, one woman, coming together, like, who are still growing and finding themselves. Even if you feel like you already know yourself and you find yourself, I feel like people are changing every single day. Your views are changing every single day. I also have a theory that people grow out of love over a period of time, right? So if there's a chart, so love over time, right? Does it ascend in value or go down in value? I would argue that people grow out of love more than they grow in love the more that the years progress in that relationship, is my argument. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at all, but I think more oftentimes than not, I think there's a greater population of people that grow out of love more than they grow in love over a period of time, is my personal opinion. Again, speaking personally, my lifestyle now, like, I could wholeheartedly be in a monogamous relationship? I know I can, right? I know I'm capable of being one man, one woman, cool. You know, again, just leaving out children for the second or the cases. And I'll even say this as well too. I feel like my current lifestyle now, being a homebody, being a lone wolf that spends a lot of time to himself. I'm always at home. I appreciate being myself. Like, I don't really like excess human interaction. And even just the energy, of course, again, if you're a man that considers themselves being on their purpose or on their grind or whatever the case is, then I don't see how it's even possible to entertain multiple women. It just seems draining to me. Like, I don't even have the capacity to talk to multiple women, to entertain, to talk on the phone, to take out, to check on you, and, oh, are you okay? How's this, that? I don't have the time to do that with multiple women. From a time standpoint, from a emotional energy standpoint, from just like an energy standpoint, I don't think it's realistic for me personally to be in an open relationship talking to multiple people. So I would lean more so on the side of monogamy, more based off of my lifestyle, right? My age, where I'm at financially, what are the cases currently, what are the cases. However, the rebuttal to that in saying, again, as I was using the term high value man, what are the cases? Like, if I continue to climb this ladder of walking in my purpose and, you know, climbing up, you know, financially, what are the cases, you know, again, just growing to be the best version of yourself. And again, that by you just doing that act alone puts you in a category outside of the common standard man. Because again, the average man, I think the average salary of a man in America is what, 35,000, 40,000. Let me Google that real quick, just so we can have some perspective. I always see this, people bring this up on like these podcasts, whatever the case is. Average salary of men in America. Just so we can have some context real quick. I just do it in my Googles. All right, okay. This is crazy. All right. Hold on. Just so y'all can see. So the average salary. The average salary of a man in the United States is $38,000. All right, okay. Let's call it 40. Let's just round up real quick. So the average salary, and this is real, like, because you always see these debates in, like, you know, podcasts, whatever the case is. Ladies out there, that you're watching as well too. I want a 6-figure man and this, that, and the other. The average salary, let's bring you back down to earth real quick. According to the Googles, the average salary of a man in the United States is, call it $40,000 a year. The average man in America makes $40,000 a year. Right? You see it there on the Googles, right? So let's run with that. Bringing it back to monogamy versus open relationships and the high value man, what are the cases? You saw that the average is $40,000. If I'm a man that makes annually 6 figures, let's just say I make $250,000. Off that alone, I'm not the average man in America, right? Off that, I'm in a category that puts me well outside of the scope of the average man, right? So, and of course, if you ask these women on these shows or whatever the case, if you walk into a random woman on the street, hey man, how much do you want your man? If you're dating a man, how much do you want him to make annually? No woman is ever going to say, oh, well, the average man makes $40,000, so if he at least makes $60,000, I'll be good. No, you're never going to hear that. Every single woman that you ask wants to be able to go on trips, wants to be able to, maybe wants to be able to stay at home and not work at all. She wants the man that's in the top caliber of whatever the case is. So, back to the analogy, back to the debate of monogamy versus open relationships. If I'm a man that's making well over $40,000 a year, so one, I can financially, be able to entertain multiple women. And then let's say on top of the fact that I'm in shape, I'm, good in my career, and whatever the case is, like I'm just the best version of myself, automatically, you will find yourself on the radar of multiple women. And men, we like women. Like we like the chase, the hunt of women. So if just by that fact alone, of course, if I'm that type of man, I'm going to most likely, again, even just speaking from a financial standpoint, entertain other women. Like, because you can, not saying that you should, but you can. Now, again, let's speak personally for me as well, too. I'm not, so funnily enough, like, damn, in comparison to the average man in America, financially speaking, salary wise, I'm doing all right. God is good. I'm good. So, you know, I make more than 40,000 a year. Let's say that, you know, just to kind of put things in perspective. So, that in itself is like, okay, cool. In you know, putting yourself in a different category just of the average man of America. So I'm outside of that realm. Am I saying that necessarily grants me the ability to entertain multiple women? Not necessarily. Again, based off of my current lifestyle, I don't like excessive human interaction. I like staying home. I don't even have the energy to be talking on the phone with you 24/7. So still, even if I'm in a financial bracket that's not of the average man, I'm not necessarily saying that's the green light for me to want to be in an open relationship or, you know, entertain multiple women and have a roster, whatever the case is. But I'm not saying that I don't understand how one could believe that if I'm a man that is making well over 40,000 a year. Again, I have the capacity to talk to multiple people. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing for them to do so. So again, that goes back to my overall stance, man. It's based off of whether you, hey man, is it monogamy or is it an open relationship? Should I stick to one person or should I have a roster? It's based off of your personal preference and what you rationalize in your own mind, bro. Perfect example. I even go back to me again, speaking personally as well too. As a man that I just admitted, I don't see me getting married and I don't see me having kids. If I continue on the trajectory that I am, again, just working on myself and trying to be, you know, the best version of myself, I can see how one would fall in the category of talking to multiple people because it's just like I have no intentions of having children. I have no intentions of getting married. So you might just find somebody who is compatible with that lifestyle or your ideologies or your, you know, outlook on how you see, you know, relationships in that regard. So ultimately what I'm saying, folks, if you want to be in a monogamous relationship, be in a monogamous relationship, whether that's backed on religion, whether that's backed on, you know, how you were raised, whether that's backed on your current lifestyle, whatever the case is. If you want to be in a monogamous committed relationship, be in that. If you have the capacity and the financial means and your lifestyle feels like, hey man, I'm at the situation where like, yeah, I can juggle 2 to 3 women or I can have, you know, terms and conditions that I am with multiple women, do that, bro. I'm not going to necessarily say that's wrong. And we shouldn't frown on people that have that philosophy either. Just because that's not your circumstance doesn't mean that it can't be somebody else's. See what I'm saying? So it's just like, that's my whole take on that, man. Like, I'm very passionate about this topic. Of course, it's a very popular topic, definitely across the millennials. I feel like just in general as well, too, in terms of relationships and marriage and this and the other. There's a whole nother topic of talk about like marriage or the case is. That's a whole nother topic. We could get into that another day. It's a whole nother topic about talking about, you know, having children. As I mentioned before, of course, I do probably lean a little bit more towards being an anti-natalist. Again, person that believes antinatalism, again, just being that a person feels like it is somewhat morally or ethically wrong to bring another human into this world, knowing the current circumstance of of our world today. That's a whole nother topic for another day, whatever the case is. I can dive into that a little bit more, but I do believe that I barely like being here. Like, I barely like being a member of this is trash ass society. Again, not on no like suicidal, like whatever the case is, but like I barely like the circumstances of which I'm currently living in. Why the hell would I want to willingly bring another person? Hey, come join me in the bullshit. I don't know. But that's neither here nor there. I don't necessarily want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But in terms of this debate, again, between Destiny and Ben Shapiro, in regards to monogamy versus open relationships, do what makes sense for you, people. Do what makes sense for you, man. Like, back your decision to do either or off of your own rationale and not that you see on social media trends or whatever the case is. That's my stance on that.